If I were sitting across from you right now, coffee in hand, I think this is what I'd want you to hear first. Who you are right now cannot be compared to who you're becoming. We hear a lot about comparison these days. Don't compare yourself to strangers on the internet. Curate your feed. Mute anyone who makes you feel behind or less than. And all of that can be helpful. But there's another kind of comparison that we don't talk about much, and it doesn't come from scrolling. What happens when you're the one making yourself feel bad? What happens when the future version of you is the measuring stick? The healed you, the confident you, the faithful, never doubts you. The woman with clarity and impact and a story that finally makes sense. Sometimes she doesn't inspire us, she haunts us. Maybe you know exactly who I'm talking about. She's the version of you who has it all spiritually together, makes decisions without second guessing, feels settled instead of scattered, isn't carrying the weight you're carrying right now. And you believe deep down that God made you for more than this. More impact, more purpose, more confidence, more peace. But instead of motivating you, this gap between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be just leaves you feeling stuck. Afraid to move, afraid to choose, afraid of getting it wrong. Especially after divorce, when everything feels especially fragile, comparison doesn't feel like ambition. It feels like pressure. Hi, I'm Bobby. I'm a Christian woman who's rebuilt her life one step at a time. Sometimes gracefully, a lot of time not so much. I've walked through divorce, addiction, unhealthy patterns, and more what am I doing than I care to admit. But I've also experienced deep healing, steady growth, and the kind of transformation that only God can pull off. I created this space for women who are moving forward with God when life hasn't turned out the way they planned. If you're holding hope for a beautiful future, you're not alone here. I want to tell you something honestly. I've spent most of my life trying to be somebody else. Sometimes that meant contorting to be like the people around me so I'd fit in. Other times it meant doing a complete 180, standing out, being unique, creating a story that was different enough to justify who I was becoming and, frankly, my worth. That standout life looked like me being the first person in my family to have a passport. I traveled to places like Turkey, Morocco, Lebanon, Cambodia, each one as part of short-term missions. I'm deeply grateful for those opportunities. They were meaningful, they were formative, and God absolutely used them. But if I'm honest, underneath the service and self-discovery, there was something else going on too. I was trying to become someone. I was comparing myself to a fictional version of myself, someone I admired, someone I respected, and someone I thought was more like who God was calling me to be. And here's the important part. That version of me wasn't bad, she wasn't sinful, she wasn't wrong. I just hadn't walked the path far enough to be her yet. That realization, the shift in perspective, it didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly. It took time, real time. I had to look back and reflect on how far God had already brought me. I remember seasons when I was deeply broken. Alcohol abuse, obesity, unhealthy relationships, and patterns that kept pulling me further from who God had called me to be. And suddenly the comparison changed. I wasn't standing still, I wasn't failing, I wasn't falling behind. I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was so far from where I had been. And that mattered. And this is where Galatians 6 has become deeply personal and not just theoretical. I'm going to read it to you. Galatians 6, verse 4 and 5. Pay careful attention to your own work, and then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. Paul doesn't say ignore the work that's already done. He says pay attention to your own actions. Measure your life by your obedience, your faithfulness, your conduct. Earlier in Galatians, he asks a question that cuts straight to the heart. Am I trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Comparison, even spiritual comparison, shifts the audience. Suddenly we're performing, proving, striving, and that's not freedom. I recently listened to John Acuff's podcast with Patrick Lencioni. And Pat has this program called Working Genius, and he talks, it's like a personality types. And he was talking about his own personal experience that him and his wife both aren't gifted in the details. And at one point, either their power or their water got shut off. And it was because they weren't paying attention to that little detail. They had the money, but neither of them had paid the bill. It reminds me that everyone has different strengths, and God didn't create one perfect Christian woman and expect all of us to catch up. He created us uniquely. Different strengths, different burdens, different callings. I don't need to be strong where God didn't call me to be strong. I need to be faithful with what He did entrust to me. Comparison tells us, be more like her. God says, be faithful with what I gave you. Those are different invitations. One of the most grounding practices in my life right now is a progress tracker. Not a perfection tracker, a progress one. It helps me track the habits that align with the woman I'm becoming. Reading my Bible, moving my body, choosing health over numbing, watching my spending, and calling my mom. Some days look messy, some weeks look slow, but when I look back over an entire month, I can see the progress I've made. Not towards a fictional future me, but towards faithfulness. If you're interested in getting your own copy of it, click the link below. Now, if comparison has been stealing your peace, especially comparison with the future version of yourself, I want to offer you this gentle shift. This week, instead of comparing yourself to who you think you should be, ask God how far He's already brought you. Ask Him to remind you of the grace that's carried you, the healing that has already happened, the strength you didn't have to manufacture. You don't need to become the future version of yourself right now. You just need to walk with Him today. There's a beautiful future ahead for you, but it isn't built by shame or reached by comparison or even rushed by fear. It's formed slowly, faithfully, and graciously by walking the path God has set right beneath your feet. You can move, you can choose, and you can hope. And you can do all of that without comparison. Friends, may you walk forward today, held by grace, even if the path feels uncertain.